Good afternoon, YouTube. It's Ian without Jane. If you don't know who we are, we're Ian and Jane, and we've been reviewing Edinburgh Fringe for the last 2-3 weeks. And this is we're back in Yorkshire now. Jane's unavailable today. She's helping out with a dementia fundraising event. And if you've not seen the channel before, we managed to review over 60 shows in 13 days. I mean, all of those are linked down below. And this is well, we'll call it a Q&A update, really. And the big question that I've been asked is our opinion on the Sadowitz show Cancellation. First of all, I have to say I wasn't at the show. But we have been asked to comment on it, so I'll deal with that in a minute. But we've got a couple of other things first of all. First of all, Vicky from Brooklyn in New York asked us about wearing masks. And we did answer Vicky's questions in a separate video, which is again linked down below. But just to give you an update, the sort of last week at Edinburgh Fringe, and we've been back now for 2 days, I was pretty much wearing a mask the whole time. Most of the shows were pretty full, and we were hearing more and more stories of shows having to be cancelled because members of the cast were coming down with COVID. So clearly there is still an issue with COVID, and you will be well advised if you're in an auditorium or a room that is full or near to full, and you're next to people that you don't know. My advice would be to wear a mask. We did have a situation where we went to one show and it was probably about half full and there was plenty of seats around, but a guy sat right behind me, and all the way through the performance for an hour and a half he sniffed and coughed, so much so that I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. I and Jane were both wearing masks for that show, and he wasn't wearing a mask. And if you've got, you know, I'm not saying that guy had COVID, he might just have had a horrible cold, but wear a mask. If you're not 100% and you're sniffing and coughing all over it, please wear a mask. Anyway, that's a bit of a rant. What else have we got? So I've got questions. Right, next question came from Anthony Marshall, and Anthony asked us this fairly early on, but actually because he's not coming to the Fringe until 2023, I thought I'd leave it till now to answer his question. Just get a mouthful of water. So Anthony's planning a trip on to the 2023 Fringe, and our videos are very helpful. And as a Fringe rookie, how many shows should I buy ahead of time versus following the recommendations of people we talked to once there? I'd like to remain somewhat flexible based on what we hear, but it sounds like a lot of shows sell out. Suggestions? ? Well, first of all, it depends on how many shows you think you'll be able to see each day. Certainly this year we felt that seeing 6 or 7 shows a day was too much. There was almost no time to do something else in between. We certainly felt that the days where we had 4 shows was ideal. Sometimes occasionally 5 would be our maximum from now on. And most of the shows that we saw, the 60 shows that we saw, were not sold out. There was only really one, and it was sold out pretty much from the beginning, and we did struggle to get 2 tickets to see it, and that show's now finished, and that was Alan Turing the musical, which was very, very good. Part of the reason it was sold out was I think there was obviously a lot of interest in it, but it was actually in a really, really small venue. And that can happen. A show that suddenly becomes incredibly popular will sell out because, you know, they can't move it to a bigger venue. So to answer the question about how many tickets you should buy in advance, the way that we always do it, Jane and I do it slightly differently. I go through the French website, Jane goes through the paper version, and then she will mark things that she wants to go and see. And it's slightly different for us now because we are reviewers, so we get a lot of press tickets. But when we've, for decades, we've gone and just bought our tickets, and we still buy tickets. We would probably spend about 150, maybe 200 quid on tickets prior to going, if we're going to come for a couple of weeks. So I would book as many of the shows that you definitely want to see before you come. The other reason for doing that is there is a booking fee, and the booking fee is £1.25 per ticket, and it is applied to all bookings up to a maximum of £5. So if you book 20 tickets, you're only going to pay £5. So it's £1.25 till once you hit that threshold of £5. So it's quite a good idea is to book as many tickets in advance as possible. But then again, leave yourself time, or leave yourself days actually. Every so often a day where you haven't got anything booked, and then you can start to put in those things that people have mentioned when you're there. If we go for the full Fringe next year, we're going to probably leave the last week pretty much free, so that we can get to see all of the shows that we didn't get to see this year that people were recommending. I mean, there's quite a few shows that people were telling us on the channel, and people that we were seeing in queues when we were talking to people. So there was lots of stuff, and there's always lots of stuff at Edinburgh Fringe that you don't get to see, no matter how long you go for. So give yourself, we had, I think the last Sunday we were there, so last Sunday, we had only actually got one show booked the day before. Another show came in on the Saturday, and we left it at that, actually mainly because we needed a bit of downtime more than anything else. So we could have put another show in there if we really wanted to, but we actually left some flexibility. Stupidly, we only did that on the one day. We should have probably done that. We should have probably booked 3 or 4 days, had a day where we've got nothing booked, and then book another 2 or 3 days. That would have been the ideal way. We've been doing it for decades, but we're actually still learning. So I hope that helps, Anthony, and for anybody else that's either just about to come or you're going to come next year. Book plenty of tickets in advance. Just where were we next? So the other thing about booking tickets is that most of the ticketing this year has been electronic, although if you go to the Fringe office, I think they were actually printing paper tickets out for people. We booked some tickets way in advance. We booked them in early July for some shows, as soon as the Fringe website went live. The thing to do there is it can be quite difficult to actually go back and find your tickets. Don't need to worry too much about that. Most of the staff at venues would do it on name as well. So we only had one small incident where we booked the tickets. Weirdly, my ticket confirmation didn't have a QR code, no matter how many times I tried to download a QR code, there was just nothing there. They weren't able to do that on name. It was the only time it happened in those 60 shows, and the fact that they saw that we had this confirmation booking was enough for them to be convinced that it was okay. So they can help you find, at the actual venue, staff were really, really helpful, no matter whose venue it was. So anyway, I hope that helps. One of the shows that we went to see was Sophie Duca, and we were less than happy with it. We gave it 3 stars. It really wasn't a show for us. But actually, just to put things in perspective and put things in balance, one of the guys, one of our viewers that we met while we were there, we met him in a queue at Bannerman's when we were going to see Trevor Locke, and that's Ian. Ian told us he was going to go. He'd seen our video about the Sophie Duca show, and he was going to go and see it. And he's given us his assessment of the show, which is obviously different to ours. So it says, "Hi Ian," his name's Ian too. "Let's agree to disagree on Sophie." I'm happy with that, really. I liked her style and delivery, and have seen way more graphic acts than Sophie this year. I feel the pace slowed a little halfway through, but would definitely go see her again. And then he hopes we're back safely, which we are, and maybe we'll see you next year. Hope to see you next year, Ian. So we've said it before on this channel. Just because we have a particular opinion on a show doesn't mean to say that we're right. You know, the Sophie Duker show wasn't for us. There was other shows that Jane liked and I didn't like. That's all part of it. Everybody's got an opinion, and rightly so. So clearly, if Sophie Duker sounds like your sort of thing, go see her. I think she is selling out. As we were talking about shows that were selling out, mainly because I think she's in a venue that's slightly too small. But hey ho. So right, on to the big issue of what seems to be the big issue of Edinburgh Fringe 2022, and that's the Jerry Sadowitz cancellation. Now, this came from Spanner left us a message saying he would like our thoughts on the Jerry Sadowitz being cancelled, and I did wonder about this. I was thinking whether I should put our hat in the ring. Jane was never seen Jerry Sadowitz, so she had no interest. So it's good that I'm doing this solo. She was never going to go and see him. I had marked his show to try and go to see it, because I've seen him about 3 or 4 times in the past. I think the last time I saw him was 2016 or 2017, and I know what he's like. The first thing I have to say about Jerry Sadowitz, he plays a character, and that character is racist, homophobic, sexist and a bigot. Okay, but it's a character. He also happens to be very funny, and I often, whenever I've seen him, I've thought I shouldn't really be laughing at this, but you know, I get that. He also does some amazing sleight of hand magic, which in this whole furore seems to have been completely missed. The fact that here is a comedian stroke magician who is actually really, really talented. And I have to say, you know, the times that I've gone to see Jerry Sadowitz, I know what I'm going to get. There has only been, the last time I saw him, there was one issue, which I will come back to, which I thought was really out of order. He did get his penis out, so I don't think it's the first time he's done that. And actually, he's not the only comedian on the planet that gets nude. I mean, there's a whole host of male and female comedians who do nudity for comic point, really. I'm not condoning that. That's the choice of the comedian, really. Can't comment on the sort of the racist stuff because I actually wasn't there. But I wouldn't be surprised if the content of Jerry's show this year was pretty racist or homophobic. You know, that's partly what you get when you go and see this character. Like I say, I was hoping to see the show this year. I didn't apply for press tickets because I just didn't think we'd get them. And I was happy to pay the £22.50 to go see him. Jane wouldn't have gone, as I've said, so I would have gone on my own. But actually, by the time that I noticed he was there, which was the 12th and the 13th, I couldn't go. Those were 2 of our busiest days at the Fringe. We had 6 shows on the Friday, and 7 shows to see on the Saturday. So there was no chance that I was going to be able to fit him in. Okay, like I say, in hindsight, it would have been much better for me to go and see the show and have, you know, the experience to be able to comment on exactly what he said. I have asked the Pleasance press office for more information regarding how many people walked out and what the issue is with staff being abused. They've come back to me with, they're using a media consultant, and we've been dealing with this media consultant over the whole of the Fringe about some of the shows that we've been reviewing. So, you know, that's full disclosure to some extent. I'll go into the Pleasant statement in a minute, but let's see first of all what Jerry said on his Twitter page about this and what he had to say in his defence. And I have to say, should a comedian have to defend their art in this respect? You tell me in the comments down below. I suspect, once you start to talk about a character and how that character behaves and he's playing a role, then doesn't that break the fourth wall sort of thing? Anyway, so this is what Jerry said on his Twitter page. I don't wish to humiliate the Pleasants, but they are doubling down on their position and I don't want to be made a victim of that. I repeat, ... I did a 75-minute show for 600 people that went pretty well and left with no hint of anything going wrong. In addition to now being told there were multiple walkouts and abuse of staff, my act is now being cheapened and simplified as unsafe, homophobic, misogynistic and racist. Well, I would argue that his show in the past have been homophobic, misogynistic and racist, and I don't expect anything different this year. As to the multiple walkouts, I've been to Jerry Sadowitz shows where people have walked out. To give you an example, and this is where I thought it was out of order, the show I saw in 2016 or 2017, I've looked back, but I actually don't keep diaries that far back really. He sort of bullied an American lady who was sat on the front row, so much so that 15-20 minutes into the show she got up and walked out. Now, for him to pick on a member of the audience, for me, felt wrong, really, in that show. I don't like it where comedians do pick on people, just for the sake of it to some extent, and he picked on this lady because she was American. And she was clearly offended by what he said. She should have got her money back, really, you could have argued. So he goes on to say, I am not J.D. I don't know who he means there, folks. He's obviously made a reference to somebody. If you know who you think he is talking about there, tell me in the comments down below, because I literally have no idea. A lot of thought goes into my show, and while I don't always get it right, especially at the speed of which I speak, and I don't always agree with my own conclusions, I am offended by those who, having never seen me before, hear words being shouted in the first 5 minutes before storming out without listening to the material, which I am stupid enough to believe is funny, sometimes important and worth saying. Additionally, there is a lot of silly, exaggerated irony and nonsense, real fake and exaggerated anger and bile, and even getting my dick out is for the purpose of a funny line which follows it. No, I won't tell you what it is, see the show yourself, or better still, just stay at home. I ask nobody to agree with anything I say or do on stage. God forbid they should end up like me. And I have never once courted a mainstream audience to come to my shows, because guess what? In real life, I really don't want to upset anyone, including Anthony Alderson. Anthony Alderson is the artistic director of the Pleasants. The show is what it is for those who enjoyed it. The rest of you, please stick to Carry On Films. P.S. If the Pleasants can't apologise to me, they should at least apologise to the 300 people who paid for and travelled to see my show on Saturday. And he's got a point there, to cancel the show, when 300 people had bought tickets, I'm sure must have upset quite a lot of his fans, because Jerry has fans. Here is the Pleasants' statement. As previously stated, the Pleasants chose to pull Jerry Sadowitz's second and final show due to numerous complaints, we became immediately aware of content that was considered, amongst other things, extreme in its racist, sexism, homophobia and misogyny. We will not associate with content which attack people's dignity, and the language used on stage was, in our view, completely unacceptable. Well, I have to say, Mr. Sadowitz has not really changed his act for decades in how he portrays this character on stage. The Pleasants knew what sort of comedian he is. They say a large number of people walked out of the Jerry Sadowitz's show as they felt uncomfortable and unsafe to remain in the venue. They won't tell me, and I have asked how many people walked out, and there is also some abuse of staff. And again, I asked how many members of staff, and this is the only statement that they are saying about the issue. We have received unprecedented numbers of complaints that could not be ignored, and we had a duty to respond. The subsequent abuse directed to our team is also equally unacceptable. So at the Pleasance, our values are to be inclusive and diverse and welcoming. We are proud of the progress we have made across our programming, which includes significant investment and support of Black, Asian and global majority artists, LGBTQ plus voices, those from working class backgrounds, and the strong representation of women. We do not believe that racism, homophobia, sexism, misogynistic language have a place in our venues. Begs the question, was Jerry Sadowitz the only comedian to crack a racist, homophobic, sexist or misogynistic joke at the Fringe this year? I suspect not. In a changing world, stories and language that were once accepted on stage, whether performed in character or not, need to be challenged. There is a line that we will not cross at the Pleasance, and it was our view that this line was crossed on this occasion. We don't vet the full content of acts. I'm assuming that would be impossible to do, really. And while Jerry Sadowitz is a controversial comedian, we could not have known the specifics of his performance. The Pleasance has staged his work on numerous times over the years, but as soon as we received complaints from those in the building, which caused us great concern, we knew we could not allow the final performance to go ahead. The arts and comedy in particular have always pushed the boundaries of social norms, but this boundary is always moving. Our industry has to move with it. However, this does not mean that we can allow such content to be on our stages. To be fair, I would like a little bit more detail from the Pleasance, if I'm honest, as to how many a significant walkout is. I mean, we've been to quite a lot of the shows that we saw at the Fringe had people walking out for a whole, you don't quite know what those reasons are. Some will be that people didn't like it, some will be that they're leaving slightly early because they've got to go to another show, and there's a whole host of why people walk out of shows. It is interesting that Jerry said that people started to shout him down fairly within the first 5 minutes of the show and then stormed out. So it does beg the question that if you've seen him before, then you know what you're going to get. You know what the content is. There has been, in the media, having looked at some of this sort of stuff, there's been a lot of say about, there was lots of stuff about this show being with a health warning to some extent. The only place that I have seen that is actually on the Fringe website. So on the Fringe website it does say warnings and additional info, and you see this on all of the actual programs really. Warning and additional info. This show contains strong language and themes some may find distressing. Now, we went to see a show which we gave 5 stars to, and it was Manic Street Creatures. Now, Manic Street Creature had a board outside saying this show is dealing with distressing streams, and a QR code that you could get help, because he was talking about things like suicide and mental health issues. Now I don't know whether there was a board outside of the Jerry Sadowitz show. There probably should have been explaining that. Interestingly, when you look at this in the Fringe paper version, it doesn't say anything about, there's no warning. So if you've never seen him before, and you read what it says here, I'm just going to read it. It says, Jerry Sadowitz, not for anyone. Stand-up magic show. Okay. Jerry Sadowitz returns with the wacky impressions of Greta Thunberg, Frankie Boyle and deep vein thrombosis. He also promises to do less hate-fueled swearing and focus more on fey liberal pish, P-I-S-H. Doesn't say, there's no warning associated with that. So if you've never looked at his show on the Fringe website and you've only got this to go by, then you may well walk into this show and not know what you're about to see, and you may well be offended. So there does need to maybe be more information for those people that have never been to one of his shows before. If you've been to the show before and you know all about it, you know what you're going to get, really. But I can understand how some people, if you've just taken this tome as the reading, then you may well be in for a shock seeing one of his shows. But what would be really great is if any of you who have been watching our videos actually were there, please either get in touch by a comment down below or drop me an email, because I'd really like to know your opinion on what actually happened at the show, because I can't seem to find out from anybody what actually happened at the show. And I would like to know how many people walked out. It's a bit difficult to know, what abuse was levelled at the staff, and that if there was any abuse levelled at the staff, that should never happen. Really, that's really not okay. But let me know what you think down below. Sorry, this is a bit of a long video, but I thought long and hard about this, and then we have been specifically asked about this on the site, so felt I would give my comments. Okay, so thanks so much for watching. All of the 60 plus shows are linked down below. We haven't finished. Although we're now back in Yorkshire, we will be reviewing some of the online content, because we've got several shows that we want to see and have been asked to see, and we are being asked still to see shows that are up there, and sadly now we've left, we can't see some of those shows unless they've got an online version of them. So I hope you found that useful. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers now, bye bye.